Kevin Ellis pulled the trigger, but Tracey Grist killed Matthew Restelli. The question isn't whether it was murder. The question is whether Tracey is tied to that murder. Under the law, a person is guilty of a crime if she intentionally helps bring it about, if she solicits it, if she encourages it, if she helps it to happen. She doesn't have to pull the trigger to be a murderer. So again, Kevin shot, but Tracey is a murderer. Fueled by her hate for Matthew, inspired by her interest in true crime, Tracey planned and executed a knockoff of the Donna Adelson conspiracy. After all, as Tracey herself put it, sometimes you have to color outside the lines. Now, in this conspiracy, Kate and her kids were the motive, Kevin was the means, and Tracey was the mastermind, the manipulator. Let's briefly address each of those three. Start with the motive. Kate was unhappy in her marriage. She viewed it as loveless. She had already moved on to other men. She wanted a divorce and custody of her kids. But when she ran away to Utah, a divorce attorney told her it wouldn't be so easy. As she put it in a text to her friend, she felt both hopeless and fucked. Tracey too gained a motive by this turn of events. Remember what Matt texted her after she convinced Kate to skip town on him. You infected Kate with the need to leave California. I will not forget your involvement in this. Enjoy your short time with them. You will not be welcome in our house again. If you don't text me the address where his children were, I will be calling the sheriff for kidnapping. Tracey not only hated Matt, but feared that if he remained in the picture, she would lose at least some level of access to her daughter and her grandchildren. Everyone understood that this was the final straw. So Tracey did what a lawyer could not. She copied an idea, a way out of the marriage with no California court, no sheriff, no shared custody, and no loose ends. It would kill Matthew. The means. Kevin's role in Tracey's plan was to shoot Matthew. He shot Matthew 7 times. 3 times in the back. Mere seconds after Matthew had come into the home, an expected and invited guest. Kevin and Tracey then waited 8 minutes after the shooting before calling 911. Time sufficient to make sure that Matthew was truly dead, time to plant the knife, time to stage the scene. During those 8 minutes, no one tried to give Matthew any life-saving aid. During those 8 minutes, Kevin said to be careful because Matthew might still be moving or kicking. And during those 8 minutes, as I said, the knife was planted. That gun used to kill Matthew, Tracey's. The knife planted in Matthew's hand, Tracey's. The manipulation. Tracey was the mastermind of this murder. She was at the gravitational center of this entire family. She was the one who got each and every family member to carry out their needed part, and certainly some of them did so unwittingly as to what Tracey's ultimate goal was. She was the connection between Kate and Kevin. You heard they didn't really have much of a relationship before Kate fled with the children to Utah. She was literally the voice in Kate's ear, telling Kate what to say when Kate was speaking on the phone to Diane, Matthew's mother. She dictated to Kate what Kate should say or text to Matthew as Kate was luring him to Utah and inside the home. And Tracey was metaphorically the voice on Kate's shoulder as she convinced her that this was the way out. She manipulated Kevin. She preyed on his protective instincts for Kate, but more importantly, his instincts for those 2 children. She pressured him into ambushing, shooting, and killing Matthew. So she manipulated Rachel to get Rory and Jake out of the house so they wouldn't be witnesses. She manipulated Rachel to be the lookout, feed updates as Matt drove to Utah. Remember the messages Rachel sent both Kevin and Tracey just a few minutes before the murder? forum, Find My. She was also the one who had Rachel tell Tim he wouldn't be needed that night. Why not? Because the plan Tim knew about, just to be the peacemaker, to be a presence during a conversation, that had changed. Tim wouldn't be needed to keep the peace because Tracey didn't need him to keep the peace. She didn't want him to keep the peace. She intended for Kevin to shoot Matthew, and the fewer witnesses, the better. And Tracey worked with Tara Lynn to help plant a false story of reconciliation in their text messages, presumably for the police to find. You saw Kate testify. She may have wanted Matthew out of the picture. We can be real. We can use our common sense. It was obvious that Kate was not capable of planning or carrying out this murdering conspiracy by herself. You heard Kevin's word. Whose idea was this? Tracey's idea. At the beginning of this trial, my colleague asked you to follow the evidence. Not what he said, not what opposing counsel said, not what I say, but what the evidence says. He asked you to consider several questions as you sat throughout this trial. Did Tracey Grist cause the death of Matthew Restelli? Did Tracey agree with Kathryn and or Kevin to kill Matthew? Did Tracey help plant the knife or plant the knife? In a moment, we will review the evidence together to see what answers it gives us to these questions. But first, I want to review just a few of the instructions Judge Griffin just gave you, because the law he gave you will help you determine which narrative is letting the facts speak for themselves, and which narrative is distorting the facts to fit a story that does not reflect the reality of what happened. Jury instruction 10 is the reasonable doubt instruction. I want to call your attention to just a few passages in each of these instructions. There are very few things in this world that we know with absolute certainty. And in criminal cases, the law does not require proof that overcomes every possible doubt. You just need to be firmly convinced. And if I say anything in this closing argument that makes it seem I'm undercutting that, I'm not. If I say anything, a slip of a tongue that makes it seem like I'm shifting the burden to the defendant, I am not. She has no burden. The state has the burden. But be clear on what the burden is. You only have to be firmly convinced, not beyond the shadow of a doubt or some other standard. What is evidence? Evidence includes what the witnesses said while testifying under oath, and any exhibits admitted into evidence, as noted. The lawyer's statements, the arguments, those are not evidence. But this is important. This is what I want to draw your attention to. You may draw all reasonable inferences from that evidence. And there are many reasonable inferences for you to draw in this case. You may ask, is some evidence better than other evidence? Facts may be proved by direct evidence or circumstantial evidence. The law does not treat any one type of evidence better than the other. It's for you to apply your judgment and common sense on how you wish to weigh the evidence. Similarly, how do you decide if a witness is credible? I obviously couldn't put the entire instruction on here, but the key passages. Use your judgment and common sense. You may consider anything that you think is important in weighing the credibility of witnesses. And this is key. You may believe all, part, or none of a witness's testimony. With at least 2 witnesses, there are reasons to believe only parts of what they told you. We'll come back to that. Now, what must be proven? Now, this is just a summary. When we get to it, when you get to the deliberation and later in the argument we discuss it, use the actual instructions. This is just a summary to help us for the moment. I want to call your attention to the 4 different charges. One of them, domestic violence in the presence of a child, there's 2 counts for each of the 2 children. But you'll notice that murder, as a party to the offense, did Tracey Grist cause the death of Matthew? Obstruction, as a party to the offense, did Tracey plant the knife or make an untruthful statement to police for 911? Domestic violence in the presence of a child, as a party to the offense, did Tracey Grist commit the murder in the presence of the children? And then conspiracy is slightly different. Tracey Grist, intending that the crime be performed, agreed with one or more persons to engage or cause the performance. 3 of these charges have that language as a party to the offense. And that's important to look at for a moment. What does that mean? How can you be a party to the offense? If she has the mental state required for the offense, that's something the instruction will tell you a little bit more about in a moment. If she directly commits it, or if she solicits it, or requests it, or commands it, or encourages it, or intentionally aids it, she's just as guilty as the person who actually did it. So if she solicited, requested, commanded, encouraged, or aided Kevin in shooting Matthew, she's guilty of murder. The same for the obstruction, and the same for the domestic violence in the presence of a child. Now, with this law in mind, I want to review the facts together with you. And in these facts, we will see, as surely as the day is long, that Tracey Grist is not just a party to the offense, but the key party to the offenses of murder and obstruction and conspiracy and domestic violence in the presence of a child. Now, we admitted a lot of exhibits in this case, a substantial amount. And this is just the documentary evidence, not to mention the videos, not to mention the audio. I'm going to thank you in advance for your patience as we go through some of that. We don't have time to go through all of that. You can choose in your deliberations to go through all of it. I want to highlight the key points for you. So let's turn to the evidence. We begin with a more in-depth look at the development of the motive and origins of this conspiracy. Now, as you've heard, Matthew and Kate married in 2016, and they lived in California. They certainly had their issues. It was called a toxic relationship during trial. Regardless, by early 2024, that relationship was strained. Kate was unhappy. She viewed it as loveless. She had already had an affair, or as she called it, stepping out on the marriage. And that was a point of conflict between her and Matthew. You saw the evidence. In January 2024, Kate confided to her mother that she wanted out of the marriage. They had been fighting so much. I want out. By May, texts between Kate and Tracey again reflect continued frustration and unhappiness. I hate my life. Hate that I have kids with Matt. This is so bad. I hate him so much. Ultimately, Kate was unhappy enough to separate from Matthew, essentially disappearing without warning on June 20th, 2024. She took their 2 young children to live at her mother's house, Tracey, in American Fork, Utah, driving the rental car that Tracey paid for and arranged for her to have. After Kate came to Utah, she and the Grist family learned that separating from Matthew and getting custody of the children wouldn't be very clear-cut. It would be very difficult. The biggest problem was that California still had legal jurisdiction over the children and the marriage. You heard Kate's recorded conversation with the lawyer that she shared with the family, where she learned the reality of their situation. As Kate summarized to her friend, honestly, I'm fucked. Just dumb California law. I just feel hopeless. So the evidence is clear about the development of Kate's motive. But in the evidence, we can also see the development of Tracey's motive and thoughts in parallel to Kate. In January, when Kate confided to her mother that she wanted out of the marriage that they'd been fighting, how did Tracey respond? She called Matt. She threatened him, even though, as she puts it, she was just watering down her words. And then Kate said, "Don't call him." And she replied that she wouldn't. "I'll just drive 9 hours and strangle him." Fuck him. By May, Kate had again confided that she hates her life. This was May 22nd. And the next day, Tracey searches the web for mountain lion. Searches the web for this. What scent attracts mountain lions to human? Tracey says, this is just a joke. I don't know about you. I've never had Google laugh at one of my searches before. This was for her and her alone. That same day, Tracey flew to California for a short visit to attend her friend Amy's celebration of life. She returned home on May 30th, and then shortly thereafter, she starts days of texts and searches that aren't just coincidence, but rather show what Tracey thinks of Matthew and what's on her mind at this point in time. So on June 4th, around 6:02 p.m., Tracey reaches out to her daughter, Tara Lynn. Can you talk? So mad at Matt. So mad. The next morning, we have this exchange where Kate calls Matt a piece of shit because of that issue with the camper trailer. And Tracey says, he's lying. And then, a little bit later that day, tells Rachel, Matt made it so I want to kill him. When Katie asked about whatever I had said about her being the camper too much, which I never said anything, he straight up lied. I'm gonna kill him. And then by the evening of June 6th, and the next morning, June 7th, she searches more. She searches more about the Donna Adelson murder conspiracy. She searches Katie Magbanwa pictures, Katie Magbanwa, Kathryn Magbanwa attorney, Katie Magbanwa's second trial defense charts. You may remember that Katie was the middleman in the Donna Adelson conspiracy to murder her son-in-law. She also searches, how old were Dan Markle's kids when Dan was killed? Dan was Donna's son-in-law, who she murdered through the use of a hitman. Or we could use the defense's statements from opening, where he said, it's just a guy who got murdered by another guy. It was a messy deal. Also a conspiracy. What these texts, internet searches, and verbal conversations show is that Tracey returned again and again over time to her contempt for Matthew and the idea of killing him. Look, we need to be clear about at least one thing here. Offhanded comments and Google searches alone do not prove guilt. Back in January, the murder wasn't in play yet. But when you see the comments continue, when you see the comments followed by research, the research followed by planning, the planning followed by an execution of the plan followed by a cover-up, it tells you what was on her mind, and you know exactly what her intent was. You heard Tracey say it herself. I searched what was on my mind. And Matthew's death was on her mind. Moreover, Tracey's feelings influenced the entire family. Let's take one example. From June 16th. This is where Tara Lynn and Rachel have a conversation. Tara Lynn, referring to her husband, asking Rachel, he wants to know if you shot your .380 yet. Rachel says, no. Unfortunately, kids make it hard to get out and go shooting. Ha ha. We need to coordinate with Mom and take it out before any chance of Matt coming. LOL. There's a phrase called kidding on the square. I don't know if you've heard it before. It's a communication style where it allows someone to convey a sincere opinion under the guise of humor. It can give you plausible deniability. I was just kidding. I was just joking about what I said. But what such joking does, when it's repeated time and time again, is to normalize violence. It desensitized the family to the idea of killing Matt. It dehumanized Matthew that they routinely joked about killing him. It takes a lot to kill another person. Normalizing, desensitizing, dehumanizing, good first steps to get there. Some of it surely started as a joke. That's got to be the truth. That common sense tells you that. It turns out to be a lot less funny when a few minutes later someone turns up dead. With this understanding of Tracey's mindset towards Matthew, consider what happened once it was decided that Kate would leave Matthew and come to Utah. So on June 16th, the arrangements were made for Kate to come to Utah. Tracey got her on the credit card, they made the bedroom plan, etc., etc. At nearly exactly the same time, Tracey makes the following search. Utah, shoot, break-in. She said, now autocorrect must have spelt it wrongly. Use your common sense. Autocorrect doesn't fill in misspellings. This was an intentional search by Tracey. And then a few hours later, she searches how to file for a divorce, how to establish Utah residency. On the 20th, Kate then came to Utah. And as a result of her coming to Utah, we have the final text conversations between Matthew and Tracey. The ones where Matt texted Tracey after she helped Kate skip town on him. these statements. The ones where he says that you infected Kate. The one where he says, enjoy your short time with them. The one where he threatens to call the sheriff for kidnapping. And we can see as a result of this exchange exactly how Tracey became concerned about what had happened, about what she had done, about the legal implications of bringing Kate and the children to Utah. For what we will see is not a temporary breather, but a permanent break. Because the next morning, on June 22nd, she makes 16 searches related to child custody, the legal implications, and parental kidnapping. Now, what did Tracey learn from all these web searches? We can infer, remember the instructions, you can make reasonable inferences from the evidence, that she learned exactly what the lawyer told Kate on July 11th. California still had jurisdiction. Jurisdiction for the divorce, jurisdiction for child custody, and there was no way Kate was going to get sole custody of the kids in Utah. And now, at this point, after that, Kate had very real reason to fear losing at least some access to her daughter and her grandchildren. There was the lawyer call on July 11th at 3:29 p.m. Lasted approximately 31 minutes. What did Tracey search at 4:39 p.m.? When was Donna Adelson arrested? So approximately 40 minutes after the lawyer call ended, Tracey is researching how long it took Donna Adelson to be arrested for getting rid of her inconvenient son-in-law by murdering him during a custody dispute. Is it a coincidence? If you still have any lingering doubt that Tracey didn't know exactly what was going on with the lawyer or wasn't controlling absolutely everything and everyone in this family, remember her conversation with Tara Lynn from before the lawyer meeting. Tara, call Kate. Help her with what to say to the lawyer. She's happy about not going back, and she needs to take legal steps now. School starts soonish, July 1st. Does this sound temporary to you? Tracey knows Kate isn't going back, even if she testified otherwise. She directs both Tara and Kate on what to do. And let's be real, kids don't need to be registered for school in Utah if they're going home to California. What else did Tracey say? The next day, I'll listen to the lawyer call and report. So what do we know? We know in Tracey's own words that she had contempt for Matt, hated Matt, disliked Matt. Use your adjective of choice. We know in her own words that she stewed over his supposed lies. We know in her own words that she repeatedly joked. She discussed killing him, harming him. We know in her own words that she was well acquainted with murder conspiracies. We know in her own words that she was researching about shooting intruders. We know in her own words, after Matthew threatened to call the sheriff over kidnapping, that she was concerned about parental kidnapping and the legal implications. And we know the lawyer told the family that this wasn't a legal battle they were going to win. Was there an initial plan for this family, for Kate, to pursue a divorce? Yes, that was the initial plan. But by this point, by July 11th, the backup plan took priority for Tracey, Kate, and Kevin. A way out. But that way out was to get Matthew out of the picture permanently. I want to remind you of one more thing on this point before we move on. Kate testified that the conspiracy first came together about a week to a week and a half after she got to Utah on the 20th. You should believe Kate to the extent you can corroborate Kate. We can corroborate this point at least. The Tara Kate messages were July 11th, a little bit more than a week and a half. What do we have here? On June 21st, Tracey told Kevin about the sheriff and the kidnapping issue, forwarded the message, and how did Kevin respond? How about no? They're not worried about Kevin. Sorry, they're not worried about Matt. And on the 26th, Kate texts Kevin, what day are you coming back? Wondering for Olaf, nickname for Matt. If I have to rush back, I can make that happen. June 29th, that week to week and a half. What did Tracey tell her sister and her brother? I want him to show up. he still thinks it's only for another week. And of course she wanted him to show up. You can't remove Matt from the equation if he's not there. In the end, whatever the exact moment was that the plan came together, whatever the exact moment the agreement was made, after the afternoon of July 11th, the die were cast. The loose strands of Tracey's ill will towards Matt, the lingering thoughts of harming him, the inspiration from another murder case, were woven together in that final day and a half into a conspiracy that culminated when Kevin shot Matthew. And if you believe at any point in time, whether it was an hour, a day, or a month before the murder, that there was an agreement, that is conspiracy, and Tracey is guilty of the conspiracy and the murder. Now, to be sure, this was a poorly executed conspiracy, with an even worse cover-up, what the defense called the messiest conspiracy. But a messy conspiracy is a conspiracy nonetheless. So now we are going to move to the execution of the conspiracy and its unraveling. The evidence of it, at least in retrospect, can be broken down into 4 phases. And so that's how I'll break it down for you today. They had to lure Matthew to Utah. They had to funnel him or get him inside Tracey's home. They had to ambush him and cover it up. So phase 1, luring Matt to Utah. We've already acknowledged this. For this to work, Matt has to come to Utah. But we also know Matt doesn't want to drive out to Utah. Kate had come to Utah under that guise of the temporary breather. Matt wanted Kate and the kids to come home to California and tried to assist Kate in coming without him traveling too. Matt, as you can see in these exhibits, this is what this is talking about, had arranged for the rental car and given her $600 so she could rent the car and drive back to California. So this was on the 11th that Matt had actually taken these steps, for Kate to come to him and not vice versa. But then Kate and Tracey worked together to create excuses as to why Kate couldn't drive to California and Matt had to come to Utah. They came up with at least 2 ruses that we know about, the sprained ankle ruse and the can't rent the car ruse, right? And so you can see on here the development, or not necessarily the development, but the evidence of the spraining of the ankle ruse. There's a discussion about the car rental and what does mama say? Plus, you're gonna sprain that ankle. And you saw in evidence, and you can review more fully if you wish, the entire text exchange talking about this supposed sprained ankle, about how they're going to go to the DI and get crutches, and so on and so forth. And then, again, later on, the can't drive with that angle comment. And further, the excuse of not being able to do it because of the out-of-state driver's license and credit card versus debit card issue. Throughout these messages, you can see that Tracey is in control of this. Not Kate. Tracey is directing this show. At Tracey's direction, not only did Kate convince Matt to drive to Utah, but she convinced him to drive the truck, one with the air tag in it. You heard a phone call in which Matt expressed concern about the truck breaking down and wanting to borrow the car. But Kate was insistent he had to drive the truck. Come back to that in a sec. That was Exhibit 13. It's around 10 minutes long, so I won't play the entire thing right now. But there's several quotes in there. One of them was, "You can't just roll the dice with the truck." Several times that Kate comes back and back, urging Matt to take the truck. And you know why, because the air tag that had been hidden inside the truck, in the bin, under the pile of trash. One Matthew didn't know was there, partially because of the trash, and partially because he had the Android phone and wouldn't see it. Now, Tracey, Kevin, Rachel, and Tara Lynn, unlike Matt, could and did track the air tag, including when Matthew came to Utah. We'll just go over a few examples. Right? Okay, so here is Tara Lynn telling Kate to hide the air tag in the truck. Then we see the group message that was created between Tracey, Kate, Tara Lynn, and Rachel, where they're all tracking Matthew. Comments are made during this discussion. But you might break down the desert. Ha 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 ha. At least we can watch it. Well, watch it because they can track it. And that was Tara Lynn saying that. Rachel responds, at least we'll be able to track the truck as long as the air tag stays there. We have elsewhere, a few days later, Kevin tracking Matt, telling Kate, hey, the tag is still active. And here's a screenshot of his current location. Even Kelly, Tracey's sister, knows that she's tracking Matt. Have you been getting hits from the AirTag in the truck? You can infer Tracey told her about it. Despite Kate convincing Matt to drive to Utah in this trackable truck, there was another problem. Matt was reluctant to come inside the house. There was a few reasons for this. One, he didn't want to turn off the truck because of the whole starter issue and the concern of would it turn back on. But the evidence also shows it was just because of what his purpose was. He just wanted to pick up the kids, get his little family, get them in the truck, and go home to California. We turned the volume, it looks like it may not have been turned up.
Yeah, what's going on?
Good, how are you?
Pretty good, what's going on?
I just called to see how your drive is going.
I'm just passing that abandoned water park.
Oh, fun. Cool.
Yeah, I just like right now I'm looking at it.
Yeah. My mom said if you're too tired, when you get here, that you can always sleep here. She said she'll keep her distance. She'll actually be asleep.
It's not like that. I'm just not gonna talk, that's all.
Okay. Or if we want, we can get a hotel. She said she'll give us $100 towards it.
No, it's not like that. I just wanna see my baby, see you. I brought my pillow and everything else.
Right.
So, I'm really worried about it. So, what do you want to do?
I want you to be comfortable.
I will be, I just become
Okay.
once I have my family.
Okay, well, good.
All I
Okay,
want.
awesome.
Yeah. So, cool. I'll just keep
Awesome.
trucking along here.
The morning started with these text messages. Good morning, getting up and getting moving. Exciting for today. That's what Kate told him. He responds, I'm over the moon. Can't wait to hug and kiss you all. You have other phone calls in the record that you can listen to from the morning. That last phone call you just heard was at 2:20 afternoon. There's another one around 8:15 p.m. You can listen to all of them if you want. You'll notice Matt's not agitated. Matt's excited about seeing his family, seeing his baby, going home. Completely different than the testimony you heard from Tracey, that he was agitated, and that explains what happened. Not what explains what happened. Anyways, Matthew didn't want to go in Tracey's home. He didn't want that confrontation. He didn't want to turn off the car as we discussed. He just wanted to load quickly and go home. The starter was an issue, but Matt also knew what the state of his relationship was with Tracey. He knew they didn't get along. He knew, they each knew, what the other thought of the other. So, we have these messages that clearly show how he feels. We've seen the messages from Tracey that clearly shows how she feels. Despite this, Kate repeatedly reassured Matt throughout the drive. She gave him the gate code. She told him the doors were unlocked. She put that cardboard out. She said she just heard Tracey would be asleep. One phone call, she told him, just come right on in. The door is always unlocked. And Tracey was actually involved in these reassurances. We see that in the evidence. Here's just one example of it. Tell Matt, I'll stay away. And I'll be as sweet as candy. Tracey, who had for months belittled Matthew, for months threatened to kill him in these so-called jokes, made a threat to him over the phone, said fuck him, belittled him, said he didn't have the balls to do anything. Tracey, who had gotten Kate away from Matthew, is now encouraging Matthew to come inside the home without knocking, without hesitation. What's common sense tell you about that? Meanwhile, when this is all happening, the family is monitoring the AirTag. Now, you heard Rachel testify that she watched it at least 5 times that day. Tara Lynn and Rachel knew about it. Here is Rachel texting Tara Lynn a screenshot of Matt's location, to which Tara Lynn replies with an expletive, that's pretty far up there. We know Tracey was doing the same. Here's the text from Tracey to Kate with that same Apple AirTag that was being used to track him. Now, July 12th was a hive of activity amongst the family as preparations were made for his arrival. Throughout the day of the shooting, the family exchanged phone calls and messages, many of which discussed Matt. We have reconstructed, for this presentation, a timeline sourced entirely from the evidence in the trial of what all these people were doing on July 12th before Matthew's arrival. Now, I'm going to give you a note up front. This is a demonstrative. This has not been admitted into evidence. You don't get it during deliberations. So feel free to take any notes that you would like from this to cross-check those exhibits on what stands out to you. Now we have a little key. There's persons involved. Matt will be highlighted in this light purple color, Kate in yellow, Tracey in red, Tara Lynn in green, Rachel in blue, Kevin in orange. Aurora, Jake, and Tim don't appear very frequently, so they're just still on white. You'll understand it. And then the communication types also get colored. Text messages in black, phone calls in purple, Facebook Messenger, whether that be a text or a call, is in blue, and web searches are in green. At the top, you'll see the time, you'll see the sender, you'll see the receiver, you'll see the message or a description of what it was, you'll see the duration or an indication that it was a text message, and you'll see a note to the exhibit number, because like I said, these are pulled from the exhibits. Feel free to refer to them during deliberations, should you so choose. So it starts out, good morning, Exhibit 8. We've already been over that text exchange. And then Tracey and Kate have this discussion about the rental car. Darn that rental place for not taking a debit card. Kate, I have to be more upset. Then they have a continued discussion about that. And then what was found on Kate's device, the audio recording that occurred sometime between 7:57 and 8:04. The recording where she goes up to Kevin, saying she needs to go make her story more believable or plausible, and that the kids know that she is upstairs. Kate then has a phone call with Tracey, then a phone call with Matt, and then we have some back and forth phone calls. Kate Tracey, Kate Matt, Tracey Tara Lynn Kate, Kate Tara Lynn. At this point we have 3 phone calls between Kate and Matthew where she is convincing him to come out to Utah. The first one, that's the one where you can't roll the dice, you heard the segment of. Go back and listen to the entire thing. The second one, Matt says he's not going to borrow a car. And by the third one, Matt says that he got the permit, he's going to be able to drive the truck out. And then right after that, Kate texts Tracey. He's going to drive out. So the plan worked. Matt's coming to Utah. And then what happens? Kate calls Tara Lynn. Tara Lynn calls Rachel. Rachel texts Tracey. Tara Lynn calls Rachel. Tracey texts Kate. I'll call you. Then Tracey, a little bit later, does call Tracey. Have you ever seen the third Lord of the Rings movie, Return of the King? Or is that one scene where they light the beacon tower and it just goes down the chain and each one gets lit in a row? That is exactly what's happening here. At least on this day, everyone in the family that's involved in these conversations knows what is going on with Kate and Matthew. And then we have that text message we already looked at where Tracey shows the AirTag location. And then we have a phone call between Matt and Kate where Kate confirms that Matthew is coming inside.
Yeah, probably just pull right up in front of the house,
Yeah, I want to slow it up. How long are you going to take? Like 15 minutes to load up?
Yeah, not long at all.
Yeah, I'm not trying to rush you. I just don't
No.
want to risk the truck. That's all,
No, I get it.
Yeah.
You gonna come inside? Are you gonna come inside and help me load up?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The front door is always unlocked, okay?
So that entire call is about 11 minutes, Exhibit 16. There's more to it. Those are some highlights. Then we get to lunchtime. We again have a flurry of calls back and forth. Or I guess I should say messages. Some of these are Facebook, some of these are phone calls, some of these are written communications. We see that Rachel sends the image of Matthew's AirTag. Carolyn, that's where she says that's pretty far up there. And then again, we have some flurry of overlapping phone calls and messages between Kate and Tracey and Rachel and Tara Lynn. And then right at the end of this back and forth, you'll see at 12:58 there's a phone call between Tracey and Kate while on the phone with Rachel. We're not sure if that's a three-way or if Rachel's put on hold at this point. And then there's a call between Rachel and Tara Lynn, and then a messenger between Tara Lynn and Rachel. But then what do we see? Tracey and Tara Lynn have a phone call that lasts 3 hours and 56 minutes. Then they have a phone call through the Facebook app for 30 minutes and 30 seconds. And then immediately after that, over 30 minutes of communication, they have a text exchange. And I submit to you that this text exchange is completely out of place to the tenor of everything else. In this text message, they continue going on about how happy they are that Kate is going back. I was calling to let you know that Matt is headed out. She already knew by that point. To pick up Katie and the kiddos. Your phone is kind of annoying because I came and have a normal conversation with you. She's going to try to make it work and be a positive experience. I told her I'm a little nervous. Heart emoji to Tracey's first message. I know he's trying, but I'm nervous and trepidation for sure. But I support her completely. I really need you to support her because she is on the fence. And she needs our love and support to do so for the kiddos. Tracey continues, my only prayer today is he's peaceful and continues to be peaceful. With her, nachos, but she corrects it. Sorry, the month to months, so I'll read it corrected. With her, not just on the drive back from California, but also in the months to come, so not just. And then Tara Lynn responds, from what Kate was telling me, it sounds like he's gotten sober and is really trying. I'm still worried about his temper. I'm still hoping that he's really had a change of heart in the last couple weeks. I'll definitely try to be supportive. It does make me nervous, though, because he says one thing and then he just does another. Submitting to throughout all of this, it's not Matt who said one thing and did another. Tracey, I love you. Tara Lynn, I know that them working this out would be the best for everybody, and I will support her no matter what. Sorry my reception is so crappy. I would have loved to have this conversation with you on the phone. Just on the phone for nearly 35 minutes. Tracey, I love you, and all I care about is that she is happy, and that the kids are happy, and I feel like her giving this another chance, especially after she came out for some time to think. It continues. The hardest part, they continue this another page or two. Tracey discussed about how she would just stay out of the way unless Matt wants to come in and say hi. I'll give them space. I feel like Matt is not happy with me. And I'll let Katie stay with us. So I'll be fine. As time goes on, I'll be fine. Probably for the best, and so on and so on. Discussion of marriage counseling. The excitement in seeing his family will be just all he's thinking about. Same. Oh gosh, don't say that, Tracey says. If he stews on the whole drive, that would not be good. I pray to God he's only excited to hug those babies. 100%, Tracey says to that. Tracey continues, hey there, I need to focus, so I love you, and I'll talk to you later. And I do not like that. Your phone is ridiculous right now. But I can't imagine how you might be feeling about that dang phone. You probably want to throw it across the room. Tara Lynn, I know, I feel like you only want to see the good side of things sometimes. And I hope that you're right about that things go well. For real. I'll let you work. But thank you for taking the time to text with me. I feel so isolated with my reception being so expletive. We know she's free to use expletives in so many other communications. She edited this one for some reason. Yet one more reason to show this is a ruse, this is planted. Does anyone really believe this? This is completely incredulous. Here's another one that we know that they knew that Kate wasn't going back. Telling everyone not to engage with Matt. There won't be us after this deceptive mood. Great. That's kind of the plan, dude. That's kind of the plan, dude. There won't be us after this. Any event, after that additional ruse, Tracey and Kevin, quick phone call, they're meeting for sushi. Tracey immediately starts planting messages with Kate. What happened since the previous day? Why is she excited now about this? Well, they're excited because they lured Matt out to Utah. He's going to come in the house. So while Tracey is putting up this farce, Kate is relating information to Matthew. Tracey, you see her right there at 2:13 p.m., searches the "It's Happening" meme. What's happening? Why is she so excited? And well, again, Tracey is putting up this farce. Rachel is clearing the house. You can see that she calls Jake, she calls Tim, she calls Aurora, she calls them all off. Rachel and Jake live there, so just make sure they're not there. Tim, who was going to come over, hear his testimony, he was told not to come. And then we continue to see phone calls throughout the afternoon being exchanged, some of them missed, some of them connected. But what's most important is that Kate and Tracey continued the ruse of Kate going back to California in those messages to Matt. You heard about preparations, you heard differing reasons for the preparations, but we do agree that the children's toys were cleaned up and placed in another room. You see in the photos that the blanket was placed on the couch right next to where Matt was shot. And also during all these preparations, the family monitored Matt's location. Kate consistently told Matt that she loves him, and she was excited, even though we know she had no intent to leave. Her bags were not packed. She's not leaving on a jet plane. She's not going to get in that car with him. And then at least 3 times in this last phone call at 8:13, Kate confirms, "You're going to come right in, though." That's Exhibit 18. And then Kate sends him the gate code. And then at 10:01 p.m., just minutes before Matt's arrival, Rachel texted Tracey and then Kevin and told them to look at the air tag as Matt passed through Orem. So who's the first person she sent it to? Tracey. Who's the second person she sends it to? Kevin. But who is noticeably absent? Who does she not send it to? Kate. Kate, the one the family is supposedly worried about, the one who has an Android device, and so can only access it through the family or one of her kids' iPads, the one we're supposedly worried about if Matthew is truly dangerous, she's the only one left out of the loop. Now finally, one last point.
You called me.
Skip, wrong way. One last point before we move on. We color-coded this for you. And I'm going to go back to the beginning. And you'll see that Tracey is in red. There it is. Here's the beginning. Tracey's in red. There she is. There she is. There she is. There she is. There she is again. Tracey. Tracey everywhere. More Tracey. She is everywhere because she is everywhere. Tracey is the hub in the middle, and her children are the spokes. She's the mission control. She's orchestrating the entire plot. She agreed with Kate to have Kate, lure Matthew to Utah and come inside the house. She agreed with Kevin to have him lie in wait and shoot. And then she had Rachel get Rory and Jake out of the house and call Tim off and track Matt's location. She had Tara Lynn help her plant a duplicitous story about being happy with Kate going back with Matthew, but also that Matthew might be stewing all day, so be careful. A story that no one should believe at this point. So how do you know she manipulated everyone? Because just look at what she says and then what everyone does. Look at her involvement and look at the result. You know what one of the worst parts of this is? Is that she didn't just deceive Matthew. She deceived some of her own children into doing her bidding without them ever realizing what was truly happening.
You called me?
We're going to move on to the ambush, the phase 3 as I divided this. So at 10:01 p.m., Matthew was in Orem. Within minutes, he arrived at American Fork. Just before 10:06, Matthew entered the gated community. Inside Tracey's home, Kate was upstairs with the children. Tracey waited in the kitchen, and Kevin had put on a holster and Tracey's gun in preparation for Matthew's arrival. There's really no other explanation for why he'd have the gun and holster on. 10 o'clock at night, inside his own home, safe, gated community. The explanation that you should infer is that he intended to use it, and that's why he had it on under those circumstances. And having been called off or sent away, no one else besides the two youngest children asleep upstairs were in the home. At 10:06 p.m., the neighbor's security camera recorded Matt's truck pulling up to Tracey and Kevin's home. It took around 30 seconds to park. The video at least lasts 30 seconds, and you see him at least stopping by the end of it. And then he gets out and goes in. At 10:07 p.m., there's the parked truck. At 10:07 p.m., within mere seconds of his entry, neighbors said they heard the gunshots from the home. Now, when you look and analyze the physical, the forensic, and the medical evidence all together, it shows you what happened. So as shown in this slide, which I already had up, Matthew took over a little 30 seconds to stop. He left his hazard lights on when he got out. He carefully parked over the cardboard, took a few moments, whatever time he needed, and then proceeded inside. He walked to the front door and entered the home as he was told to. Remember, the door is always unlocked. The screen had been removed. And he took off his sandals right inside the front door as a good guest does. And then we can see from the Faro scan that immediately, or within seconds of Matt's entry, Kevin began shooting. Matthew tried to flee down that hallway to the left. That makes sense because the evidence shows Kevin must have been standing to his right based off bullet casings, bullet trajectory, and all the other scene evidence put together, not any one individual thing. Now, unfortunately, Matthew didn't make it far. You can see with the black redacted box where Matthew fell after being shot in the chest, the side, the wrist, and the back 3 times while he moved away from the door towards the hall, landing that 10 or 15 feet from where he left his sandals. Now we're going to come back to that aspect in a moment and where Matthew fell. But for now, just remember what the crime scene expert, he pointed out where Kevin would have been based off the totality of the circumstances. Casings, the bullets, the trajectories, and all that. And from his testimony, you may reasonably infer that this was an ambush. 10:06, you saw it on the video, 30 seconds, more time to get to the door, 10:07 shots fired. There wouldn't have been enough time for Kevin to run around to that garage and get that gun from the safe. There would not have been enough time for Matthew to walk around as it was described in some of the testimony. It was immediate or near immediate ambush. And that's the result. At 10:08 p.m., the neighbors who had heard the shots texted Tracey and asked if they were okay. At 10:09, no response. They called 911. Now, around this time, Kate, who had stayed upstairs with the kids, overheard Kevin say something to the effect to be careful, because he, being Matthew, might still be moving. Interestingly enough, that's one of the few things that Kate said that didn't have some form of independent or external corroboration until Tracey took the witness stand and said the same thing. So at least that part was true from her testimony. Tracey did not call 911 until more than 8 minutes after the shooting, 6 minutes after the neighbor had called. And by that time, police had already been dispatched and arrived 2 minutes into Tracey's call. Notice when they arrived, the lights were still off. No one in this 8 minutes turned on the lights. They were expecting him and didn't have the lights on awaiting him. Like I said, it was a bad cover-up to a bad conspiracy. We'll come back to that. In that 911 call, Tracey described Matt as armed with a knife, even though when she testified yesterday, she couldn't remember seeing the knife. To police who arrived, Kevin's first words were, "That guy had a knife and I voice trailing off." These statements were not true. Matthew was not armed, he was not an intruder. Remember, he was invited. He was expected. He'd been tracked. The cardboard was out. He's given the gate code, specifically told to come in. Walk right in, because Tracey would be asleep. But she wasn't. And he did, to his death. This brings us to the cover-up, the obstruction, perhaps a better way to put that. First, there's the knife. Okay? As known in the 911 call, Tracey said Matthew had a knife. And then when police arrived, Kevin claimed Matthew had the knife. At the police station, Kevin reiterated Matthew had a knife. Tracey said the same thing at her interview at the police station. Hours later to the neighbor, Tracey also said Matthew had a knife. That's the story. A knife, as you can see, was found in Matthew's hand, but that knife was planted. There are numerous pieces of physical and forensic evidence that show this to be the case. Let's start with the photo. Just to start with common sense. Does that look like that knife in these conditions was planted? Or that he'd been holding it all along? Now, as you consider that, consider this evidence. That knife is in the wrong hand. Matthew was left-handed. That knife is in his right hand. Second, the knife is in the wrong position. It's backwards in the wrong hand. So the blade is facing inward, and the spine of the knife is facing the fingers, with the finger grip facing the palm. Can I get that, please? So what I have here is not the actual knife. The actual knife is in that exhibit box. Remember we showed it to you? You maybe saw the zip ties. So this evidence had DNA testing. You can't touch that. You can see it if you'd like. So we have brought in a demonstrative. This is you could call it a replica if you want. You could call it a facsimile. It's just another copy of that knife. You can see what it is, a tactical knife. You can see back here the spine. You can see right here the finger grip. And you can see how someone would naturally hold this knife if they were going to use it. But you can also see from that photo that that's not how the knife is being held in his hand. It's being held 180 degrees backwards because it was planted in his hand. Consider the blood evidence that was discussed. There was the discussion of the blood pooling and the patterns. To be honest, the photos are somewhat graphic, and I'm not going to show all of them. You have all the ones that were admitted into evidence, and you can review it for yourself. But you can see enough here. There's blood pooling near his shoulder. There's no blood pooling under the arm, where that gunshot wound is. Blood is everywhere else, but where the arm and the wound is. And that tells you that arm had been moved. Then there's the medical evidence. Matthew had been shot through his arm near the wrist. We had a discussion where the gunshot wound perforated the skin, the tissue, the ulna bone, and the flexor muscles. Do you really think Matthew would still be holding that knife after being shot 7 times, 1 time in the wrist, running down that hallway away from Kevin, and falling face first on the ground? And fifth, we know that the knife belonged to Tracey. I've reiterated this, and I'll keep reiterating it. Believe Kate to the extent you can corroborate Kate. Okay? Now, Kate did testify. This is Tracey's knife. She told you where it was hidden in the laundry room. She told you that she saw it beforehand. And how can we corroborate this? Well, we know it's an unusual knife. The detective discussed local stores don't sell this. We saw where Tracey gained access to it. Her friend Amy's husband, Pierre, had passed away, but he'd been getting these tactical mystery boxes from My Tactical Promo. And that Tracey, by being in the home multiple times, taking care of her friend Amy, had access to it. We learned in testimony that Tracey's not above taking things from Amy. We talked about the titles, right? So she had access, and she does that in another circumstance. So you can infer that she did it in this circumstance. And we know from the Facebook posting by mytacticalpromo.com that it is that knife. And then there's the DNA evidence, where, there's a lot you can say about DNA, but what you can say is there's very strong support that the DNA on the knife belonged to Matthew and Kathryn, or Matthew and Kevin, and Matthew or Tracey. Point of that is, you may not know which of the Grist family members planted that knife based solely off the DNA, but you know it wasn't handled only by Matthew. And you know someone in that home put it in there. Okay. You also heard the expert's opinion that it was planted, right? Consider that for what it's worth. But you already know it from your common sense, from these factors that we just went over, that Matthew was not holding that knife when he was shot, and he was not holding that knife until Tracey and Kevin put it in his hands. At this point, I want to review a few of the instructions with you. I'm not going to put these on the slide. You're free to follow along. You have a copy of these. If you want to make notes, you can. You certainly don't have to. And I want to be certain of this, that you follow the exact language in these instructions. I'm just going to walk through a few of them. And we're going to start with inferring intent, right? Tracey left a lot of digital evidence that tells you what her intent is. But you still have to infer a little bit. And you have to infer a little bit about everybody else in the family and what their intent and motivation was. And that's what this instruction tells you can do. You seldom have direct statements, so you use the statements that you have, use the conduct that you have, the circumstances you have, to see what the intent is. And then on instruction 30, we have the party liability, the party to the offense instruction that we went over earlier. And we already discussed this, that Tracey is guilty if she directly did any of these crimes, and Tracey is guilty if she intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly solicited it, requested it, commanded it, or encouraged another person to commit the charged offense, or she intentionally aided another person to commit the charged offense. Okay, so with that in mind, let's look at the actual crimes. Instruction 31 is the murder instruction. Tracey Grist as a party to the offense. Let's just focus in on intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Matthew Restelli. If you want to look at B, you want to look at C, you're certainly free to. There's various theories. You could look at this evidence and decide that it was a depraved indifferent circumstance. But the theory the state has told you today, the theory that the evidence most closely tracks, is that Tracey Marie Grist intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Matthew Restelli by agreeing with Kevin to have it happen, by agreeing with Kate to have it happen, by soliciting or requesting Kevin to do it, or maybe she just encouraged Kevin to do it. Really, the evidence shows she did all three. She certainly aided by aiding in the ruses of Kate, that she gave Kate the pass to Matt, by helping convince Matt to come into the home to be ambushed by Kevin. Then we look at instruction 34, conspiracy. The only one of the charges that is not a party to the offense charge. On this one, a little bit more simple in some ways. Tracey Grist intended that the murder be performed, agreed with one or more persons to engage in conduct or performance of the murder. So you could almost think of it like, loosely, as almost like a Russian nesting doll, right? That she conspired, but that's a lot less of a crime in a certain sense than being a party to the offense, right? She can agree that the murder happens without necessarily doing all the soliciting, all the encouraging, all the aiding, right? She just agrees with them to engage or cause it in any little bit of I should probably rephrase that slightly differently. She agreed and then took a substantial step along the way towards committing it. And the substantial step could be a little bit or far less than the party to the offense soliciting or encouraging or aiding. Then we have the obstruction of justice, back to the party of the offense. And you know, we have this, and it's a little bit lengthy, but I want you to compare that to 36 while we're doing this. So Tracey as a party to the offense, had the intent to hinder, delay, or prevent the investigation, the apprehension or prosecution, conviction, or punishment of any person, regarding conduct constituting a criminal offense, and then did one of these three things: altered, destroyed, concealed, or removed, made or presented or used anything known to be false, or provided false information. 36 makes this easy by putting that in plain language, what that means. What that means is, did she plant the knife, or was she a party to the offense of planting the knife? And or did she make an untruthful statement to 911 or the police about Matthew Restelli having the knife before Kevin Ellis shot him? And then we have instructions 37 and 38. They are substantially the same. They are both the offense of commission of domestic violence in the presence of a child. Count 37 represents Steele being upstairs in the bedroom when Matthew was shot. 38 represents Cheyenne being in the bedroom upstairs while Matthew was shot. And instruction 39 just simply points out that no one is disputing that Matthew and Tracey were cohabitants. One more thing I may want you to look at on the obstruction charge before we move on from the instructions. That is for planting the knife or the lies. And I want you to consider on that one Tracey's conflicting stories about the knife. You can see the evidence for yourself. There's no way she didn't see the knife. But think about the conflicting stories about a related point to the knife. She told Diane that she hadn't checked the pulse. She told 911 that Kevin had checked the pulse. And then her testimony is that she had checked the neck and the wrist twice. There's no way that she leaned down to check the neck or the wrist and didn't see that knife. On the other hand, there's no way that that knife was in that hand until she and Kevin planted it. So members of the jury, we're reaching the end here. Are you firmly convinced that's the standard? Are you firmly convinced that Tracey is the reason for or cause of Matthew's death? Are you firmly convinced that she did one of these things: solicit, request, command, encourage, or aid the murder of Matthew Restelli? I want to end with the words of her co-conspirators. There were three persons involved in this murder: Kate, Tracey, and Kevin. Again, believe Kate, and you can corroborate Kate. She came in, she testified. But bluntly, her testimony didn't go well. She clearly has issues, to put it nicely. But she gave a very specific description about the conspiracy and what was happening. She gave a very specific description of how she even asked Tracey to call it off, and Tracey said no. And you may think there's reasons to discount her because of that credibility instruction. But at the same time, you also have the third person in the conspiracy. And what did the third person in the conspiracy say in the recorded phone call? Kevin said also that this was Tracey's idea. Kevin admits to his involvement. And Kevin says that he tried to go to Tracey and say, "Are you sure this isn't the best idea you're having? You will affect so many lives."
She ruined so many lives, and I'm worried to hurt her feelings.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you something now, a little extra.
What's that?
Oh, I asked if she was sure.
She was sure?
Mm-hmm. Because she was like, tell me anything about all this stuff that happened. And I was like, are you sure this is exactly what would happen? And I'm like, she's scheming and doing all this. And she says yes. And she beat Cheyenne. That was her response. Or he beat Cheyenne.
Oh my God.
I never heard it here. I'm sorry that I wanted to tell you that for so long.
No, I know. I can't even imagine.
And I
That's
feel
so
like
sad.
I still bear so much of the blame too for all this.
And that makes me so mad that she's caused you to have to live with this.
I mean,
Like it's,
I could have done something different. I should have started off, but I should have said no.
yeah. Yeah. But your mom should have never asked you that. You should have never had to have to say no.
The same person who planned this is the same person who baked cookies. It's the same, like,
And that's wild. Like, she's the one who made me my chocolate chip cookies without chocolate chips.
I know.
Yeah.
And blueberry muffin cake for your birthday.
Yeah. But this is what she wanted to do. This is, I mean, she had it, and then there's consequences. She had to.
I just don't think, she just doesn't think far enough ahead. She never has. And I think she just is so used to getting rid of everything, she just,
I literally warned her. I said, this will change so many lives. You won't even know how many lives it's going to change.
oh my God, you said that? That's, wow.
Yes. I said, this is a decision you can't take back. I said that to her.
Wow. Kevin.
Yeah, so there's that.
You were the voice of reason we all wish we could have, like, seriously, that's what Rachel and I were talking about, like, the reason she didn't want to tell us is because she didn't want to hear our opinion. But you gave her the opinion that we would have given her. Like, you,
I don't remember exactly what I said, but I know I got it across very eloquently and very efficiently. Of like, this is not the best idea you're having. Like, think about it for a second.
oh my God.
But and then that's why I feel so much blame, because I would step up at that point and be like, you know what, no, I need to take my own advice.
Yeah.
I trusted her.
Whose idea was this? Tracey Grist. Whose ruse was it to get Matthew to come to Utah? Tracey. Who manipulated Kevin into shooting Matthew? Tracey. Who had Rachel clear the house and call Tim off? Tracey. Who had Tara Lynn help her create false texts claiming reconciliation and joy over reunion? Tracey. Whose gun was it? Tracey. Whose knife was it? Tracey. Who knew this would affect so many, many lives? Tracey. Who hated Matthew Restelli? Tracey. Who was warned? Tracey. Who can't take it back? Tracey. So whose crime was this? We ask you to find Tracey Grist guilty of murder for causing the death of Matthew Restelli by encouraging it, soliciting it, requesting it, and aiding it to happen. Guilty of conspiracy for agreeing with Kate and Kevin to end Matthew's life. Guilty of obstruction, for planting the knife and lying to police. And guilty of 2 counts of domestic violence in the presence of a child. For having Matthew killed while his 2 small children were asleep upstairs.